Hello, everyone. Hello. We're back. The Sunday sessions are back. Since we saw you last September, we are back. And today is the first of a 4-part series of online sessions that I will host with thought leaders from Africa and elsewhere in the world under the theme, using the science of the future to shape your present. Now, here's the thing, call your neighbors, call your friends, children and children. Tell them it's happening right here. Your favorite person on virtual Sundays, talk to you about what matters in your life. You know I always hook you up, right? So this series that we're starting today aims to bridge our understanding of how science might shape our future, how we can use these predicted futures to shape the present, and how do we ensure that decisions and discussions include the voices of the African youth. Oftentimes, we wait until the future is shaped, it's done, and it's something else, and then we say, let's bring the voices of the African youth. Now, we're doing things differently this time. We can see that science and technology are developing at an unprecedented rate. And so we want to make sure that we get the voices of the African youth now before it's too late. So that's what I'm saying. Make sure that you call everyone you know, young and mature and elderly, ask them to join us, because we're here to make sure that all of us are on board as we work to making sure that we use the science of the future to shape the present, right? But why? Why is it critical that we include the voices of Africa's youth in shaping the science of the future? As I said, oftentimes the voices of the African youth is forgotten. Sometimes the voices of Africa altogether is left out. Now we've got to grab this moment where we're inviting the voices of African youth to come on board to shape the future, because they are working now to mitigate both emerging and long-standing inequalities. Only by bringing diverse voices and ideas to the discussion, we can ensure we get the best thinking from every part of our society and corner of the world. We want those voices to come around the table so that we can get all the thinking, all the ideas, the diverse voices from around the world involved in shaping the current, the present, using the science of the future. We need your fresh perspectives in these dialogues and debates. It is a matter of intergenerational justice, and we don't want to do it late and talk about how do we ensure intergenerational justice. We want to do it now. Young people will inherit the future, and therefore they must be involved in shaping how science should be used to affect it. They must be involved now. So as I'm talking, I hope you're calling them in and the room is filling up. Because in these 4 sessions that we're starting today, the University of Cape Town is partnering with the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator, GESDA, to bring these sessions to you. We're partnering with GESDA, it's UCT and GESDA coming together to bring you these 4 sessions. But these sessions, as much as it's UCT partnering with GESDA, they are not just for UCT staff and students. They are for everyone. More specifically, they are for all young people. We want young people from all over the continent and all over the world to join us and engage with us. But more than anything, we want young people in the African continent. So if you're sitting somewhere in Lesotho, you can call your cousin in Uganda or in Bloemfontein and tell them this is for them too. They don't have to be registered with UCT, or they don't even have to be registered with any university. We want all young people to join in these sessions. And here's the thing, I will announce a challenge at the end of this session, and in each session, I will repeat the challenge, as well as the prize that stands to be won. And that prize will be won by anyone, whether they're a UCT student or not. The panel of judges will decide who wins. And I will tell you what the challenge is. Anyone stands a chance to win. I have to say anyone who's 40 or below, because I want young people to join in this challenge. I don't want people who are 40 and above to win the challenge. I want us to be young people. Well, and I'm using my definition of young at this point in time. I'm saying 40 and below. So call everyone else. And of course, you want to call everyone so that as you work on the challenge, you can brainstorm with other people around you who have had the sessions. To answer the challenge or to participate, you will need to hear these sessions because you'll draw on what we're sharing for you to be able to engage with the challenge that will be given you. This partnership between GESDA, as I said, and UCT, aim is to create the anticipation initiative through these critical and thought-provoking conversations. And it is part of our vision as the University of Cape Town to ensure that we are a future-oriented university that creates leaders who tackle social injustices. And we don't just want to talk about this future. We want this future to us to use this future to shape this our present. And we want African youth to think about how can they use this future to think about their present. African universities play a critical role in training and upskilling future leaders to be fluent in both science and diplomacy for addressing global challenges. And you might be thinking, but why? Who is GESDA? Why collaborate with GESDA? Well, GESDA is a Geneva-based think and do tank. And the mission of GESDA is to anticipate, accelerate, and translate into conclusions the use of emerging science-driven topics, using, among other tools, the GESDA Science Breakthrough Radar. Okay, and the GESDA Science Breakthrough Radar, you can find it on the website. GESDA aims to anticipate scientific breakthroughs and to ensure that we use the predicted challenge advances to improve well-being and promote inclusive development. And that's why it's important for us to have these conversations. So note, I said there'll be a challenge later. Keep watching it. But as you're watching and you want to write on your Twitter page or your Facebook page or even Instagram, please use the hashtag Science for Africa and make sure to tag at UCT_news and at GESDA Global to on quantum revolution and advanced artificial intelligence. Before we get on, I've got two visitors who are going to be talking to, and I'll introduce them later. But before I introduce, I want us to play two short videos to use today's themes, the quantum revolution and advanced AI. So the first video will play, and then we'll do the next video, and thereafter I'll come back and introduce our first speaker. We've got two speakers, one many, and I will introduce them. I will have conversations with them. Be sure to write your questions. If you are on the platform here, write in the question and answer section. If you're on Twitter or on Facebook, write them in the comment section and we will get them. I'll ask the questions to our visitors here today. Let's look at the videos. we're going to get into the conversation, and I'm going to first introduce to you Dr. Divine Fu, who is a social anthropologist and director of HUMA, the Institute of Humanities in Africa at the University of Cape Town. Divine was director of publications and dissemination program at the Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa, called GESDA, from 2017 to 2019. He joined UCT in 2012 from the University of Basel in Switzerland, where he was a researcher in the chair for research and methodology at the Institute for Sociology. Divine has taught at the Universities of Basel, Cape Town, Western Cape, and has been visiting lecturer at the University of Brasilia, Tokyo, and Gothenburg. His research focuses on the politics of suffering and smiling, particularly on how urban youth seek ways of smiling in the midst of their suffering. He has researched Botswana, Cameroon, Senegal, and South Africa. He focuses on the political economy of Pan-African knowledge production, and also on AI and the ethics of care in Africa. Divine, I don't know if you're on the screen, but I want you to introduce your views on how advanced artificial intelligence, from your perspective, will change the future. We've seen the videos. They gave us a sense of what's about to happen. How will it change our future from your perspective, or from your sector, from your discipline? And comment also on the implications for the African context, with a focus on youth and the next generation. And how do you think we should prepare now to ensure these technologies benefit all people and mitigate their undesirable uses or consequences? As I'm introducing you, Divine, I feel like I should have invited first Francesca to say what it is, and then you can say to us how do you see it from your perspective, because maybe we get Francesca to tell us what is this artificial intelligence, what is quantum revolution, how is it about to change our world, and then we'll call it. Let me introduce Francesca, and I'll come back to you, Divine. But I have Professor Francesco Petruccione. He's a global expert on quantum technology and a contributor to GESDA Science Breakthrough Radar. He studied physics at the University of Freiburg and received his PhD in 1988 at the habilitation degree in 1994. In 2004, Francesco was appointed Professor of Theoretical Physics at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban. In 2007, he was granted the South African Research Chair for Quantum Information Processing and Communication. At UKZN, Francesco has been the Pro Vice-Chancellor of Big Data and Informatics. Currently, he is the Interim Director of the National Institute for Theoretical and Computational Sciences, and since May 2022, a Professor of Quantum Computing at Stellenbosch University and a fractional professor at UKZN. Francesco, I'm going to ask you to give our viewers some idea on quantum revolution and advanced AI, and then present your position statement on how it could be used to change the present. Sort of give us a sense of what's coming and how it can be used to change the present. And then from there, I'm going to go to Divine to tell us what his discipline says about what has come out of your discipline. Francesco, over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. You're asking tough questions. Maybe one important remark to do before we start discussing how these new technologies impact the future is that we shouldn't forget that they have been impacting our past for quite a while. Yeah, quantum physics, quantum science, and technology has been around for 100 years. Yeah, the theory as we use it today was essentially codified 100 years ago. Yeah, and people speak of a first quantum revolution that happened 100 years ago that gave us very important technologies. Yeah, for instance, transistors, lasers, diodes are everywhere. Yeah, when ESCOM pulls the plug, we are happy to have some LED diodes at home that give us some light with little electricity. Yeah, so those technology has already shaped the way we live. Yeah, and they were also very important for the development of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Yeah, because machine learning and computers, grew in parallel. Yeah, the more powerful computers get, the more powerful machine learning and artificial intelligence become. Yeah? For instance, one of the reasons why machine learning is now pervasive everywhere is because graphical processing units are everywhere now, in every better laptop or desktop, or even in high performance computers, and allows us to do unbelievably quick calculations that allow machine learning to do the impressive things that it does, like driving cars and other crazy things. Where at the moment, people, for instance, from my background, coming from the quantum side, people speak of a second quantum revolution, because we've learned over the last maybe 20, 30 years to use the less intuitive aspects of quantum mechanics. People have heard about entanglement, which can be thought as a kind of a correlation that is stronger than what we can experience in our daily lives. And it turns out that these crazy things of quantum mechanics can be used as resources to do things that we can't do with the current let's call it classical technology that each of us has in our laptop or computers in front of us at the moment. And one of the technologies that comes out of this is quantum computing. So quantum computing is a completely different paradigm of computing. That is based on the laws of quantum physics, and uses all these crazy, some people call them spooky, although they're not so spooky, that's just how it is, properties as resources to speed up calculations of certain problems. And we know already that there is a whole zoo of algorithms that we know already now that will outperform the current algorithms that we use on our current hardware of today. So we can expect really great things, as we saw in the videos, and solutions to problems that are really challenging. For instance, one example that was mentioned in the video, the one of fertilizers. We all know, in particular these days with the global crisis in which we're living, that fertilizers are crucial for food production. But they're very costly to produce because you require very high temperatures, very high pressure. So it's not an easy procedure. But we all know that bacteria can do it essentially for free in the ground. But at the moment, we don't have the hardware to simulate exactly what bacteria do, so that we could implement it artificially. And the same, of course, for many other aspects. So I could go on for hours. So you tell me when you want me to stop and hand over to Divine. There are many other examples where quantum technology will impact substantially our existence. One at the border, at the intersection between machine learning and quantum technology is quantum machine learning. So the idea there is to do machine learning on quantum computers. So bringing together almost the best of the two worlds, artificial intelligence and quantum. But there are also other things that maybe at the moment are a little bit more speculative, but might have a huge impact in future, which is the study of quantum effects in biological systems. And one, probably one of the best known examples is that of photosynthesis. We, in particular, in these days with the big energy challenges that South Africa is experiencing, we know that one possible solution, and probably the best one, is the use of renewable energies, of solar energy. And we know that plants can do it very well. because that's the only source of energy that they receive. And there is strong evidence that plants use quantum effects to be so efficient in converting solar energy in the energy that that they need to grow. And so we can learn from these effects to produce better artificial photosynthesis, to make sure that we don't have load shedding anymore, in the near future. So that will already be a big victory for quantum technologies.
Francesco, thank you very much. Let me warn people that I'm out here in Zimbabwe and my signal is not very good. So if you're struggling to hear me, my apologies. I had to come here for a family funeral, so my apologies for this, but we've got to do this. It's very important. And what you've just said to us is very instructive. I'm now even more interested to hear what Professor Dr. Divine Fu thinks about the work that you're doing, how intelligent machines are going to affect how we do things. Perhaps how will AI will change our future, Divine? Can you comment on that, on the implications for the African continent or for the African context? Perhaps with a specific focus on the youth and the next generation. Should they be concerned? Is this just a matter of excitement, or should it be a matter of concern? Or should they do what I'm saying, grab this science of the future to shape the present? Divine.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katie, and also thank you very much, Patricia, for that introduction, and also, just for inviting us and for restarting this. I think it's a very exciting a conversation, and I can listen to you over and over and over, because I think the work that you're doing is really fascinating. And I want to say, just to add to what the good professors has said, that I think AI is very important. I find the term advanced AI itself almost like an oxymoron, because I used to think that AI was already advanced. So the idea that there is another step after AI is also very fascinating. And we ask questions, where that is going to be. Also quantum, the idea of a quantum revolution is itself very fascinating. I must say that when I was in school, I was fascinated by physics, and then again I had to run away from physics, and then only to find that physics met me many years again in my life, and especially now. So on the fact that quantum that the quantum physics and quantum mechanics has been with us both in the past and the present, and that we are thinking about how to take it into the future, is really something that we need to think. It will change life. It is important for life. And I think, as the professor has indicated, with things like the transistor radio, with things like cars, like computing, like lots of stuff that we have with us today. What we do with the work that we are doing is to place it at the heart of the human, and to remind ourselves that the purpose of science itself, apart from being play on one side and being inquiry on another side, that it is especially about the human. And that we need to take on board questions that relate especially to ethics and the way in which we deal with this excitement. So while it is important to push for all of these ideas which we've heard from Petruccione, we want to bring in some kind of mitigation into this euphoria that we do have today. In terms of the questions that you asked before about the youth, I think it's important. We have to embrace it as young people. We have no choice. Young people have already embraced it. Young people are involved in it, are participating in it on an active, either as students, as users, or as people who are producing. But also what we would like to push for is the importance of interdisciplinary work, ensuring that such work happens as a result of collaboration, and that one cannot produce technology without looking at the ways in which this technology will locate themselves in the lives of people. Because even when we give them intentions, we have seen over time that they create all sorts of very horrible consequences despite their positives in society. So that's one thing that we would like to push for. The other is also to just look at those who produce this technology and the spaces where this technology is produced. This is something that we are doing now. We call it the original sin, or the original sin of AI. Just ensure that even when a technology happens in spaces like quantum physics or quantum mechanics, which is also the science of uncertainty, and which happens especially in places like in laboratories, that this is still people who create this. So we invest a lot in the humanities in trying to understand who these people are and the kinds of ideas that shape the work they do. And how this in turn shapes the kinds of technology that they produce in the end, just to ensure that when these technologies are actually put to good use, that they are actually ethical, you know, in the way they come into use. And a small example, Petrusiana, is I always talk about keyholes, like spying, that we have taken this art of having phones and other technology that listen to us as we speak. It's become the norm. But this grows out of really problematic spaces, lots of people who have keyhole masculinities and like to snoop on other people. But that over time, we have taken this as something normal and don't interrogate, you know, it really tells you how much we need to invest and have this collaboration between these two spaces with quantum physics, quantum mechanics, the quantum revolution, and also really making sure that it is deeply embedded in a humanist approach and collaboration. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Divine. Thank you very much, Divine. Francesca, I mean, South Africa has a long history in quantum research. I mean, as Divine says, this is a science that's been around. Young people are involved. And our history in quantum research is with an explosion of activity in the recent decade here in South Africa. In 2021, the South African Quantum Technologies Initiative was formally launched by the South African Department of Science and Innovation. And it was launched to put quantum technology firmly on the national agenda with ambitious aims for the quantum industry. Why is it important for the international community that South Africa is a key player in the quantum revolution?
Interesting question, but I would say it's even more important for South Africa to be important, not just for the international players, just for us. You know, when new technologies emerge, and one I think very nice example is the semiconductor revolution. Yeah. That Africa completely missed out on it. Yeah, there is no production of semiconductor of chips and notable production of chips for semiconductors, for transistors, and so on the African continent. Yeah, and other emerging countries. Yeah, in the past, like Korea, Japan, they really heavily invested and are now leaders in the field. Yeah, and now there is a new potential technological revolution. Yeah. And we need to make sure that we don't miss out, yeah, because otherwise, you know, we will still keep importing laptops from Japan, from China, from Korea, from the US, and not produce our own. Yeah? And by producing, I don't mean just assembling the parts, just producing the hardcore part of the technology, yeah? And that's where the power rests. Yeah? And that's why it's important that we kickstart a quantum industry in South Africa and in the African continent. Yeah, and you know, for many years I fought for South Africa to adopt a kind of a national policy for quantum technologies. Yeah, and I was one of the co-chair of the panel that wrote that document that you referred to. So that is a big milestone for us, because now we know that government is behind us, yeah, and not just in words, yeah, because gratefully there's also government investment that goes into it since a year or so, yeah, and that will make a big difference. Yeah? It's important to understand that our international competitors have pockets that are a little bit deeper than ours. Yeah, and just if you take the big players, the big industrial players, yeah. Maybe I don't need to mention names now, yeah, but the usual suspects, they are investing billions of dollars in this technology, yeah, billions. Yeah, they set up institutes where they have hundreds of research work. So probably just one of the standard big companies has probably more researchers in quantum technology than we have in South Africa in total. Yeah, so we need to change that. Yeah, and one of the ways to change that is to make it attractive to young people. Yeah, and this is the reason why we are here. Yeah, we want to create awareness in the youth, in the young people, maybe also in the not so young people. Yeah, because we need the help as well. Yeah, to get interested in these technologies. Yeah? Because new technology give the opportunity also to set up startup companies. Yeah, that. Might grow into unicorns, yeah, and create lots of jobs, yeah. And in this quantum technology business, there are two aspects. Yeah? One is the hardware, yeah, where unfortunately at the moment it's very difficult for us to compete because to build quantum computers you need hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah? That are a little bit out of reach to the standard South African university environment. Yeah? But because of the developments of the fourth industrial revolution, the quantum computers that are available today are always are available in the cloud. Yeah, so every young South African or African that has a smartphone can in principle access quantum computers in the cloud and start playing around with them. Yeah, so that developing software is not expensive. The hardware is expensive, but developing software is free. You can just download Python and off you go, and it is free. Yeah, so there are huge opportunities there. Yeah, for young people to get involved. Yeah? And we've organized many hackathons, schools, and so on and so forth, and it is very attractive to young people because they see that it's something new that will have a big impact by the time they finish their studies. Yeah, because as we speak, quantum computers are being developed and make better and bigger, and because we are still far away, as the video of GESDA indicated, from having a kind of a universal quantum computer that does everything we want. Yeah? But by the time students that start today have their PhD, yeah, we might be there, yeah, on the time scale 10 years, yeah, and so that now is the time to get engaged with it, yeah, because they will be the first generation to really profit from this new technology, yeah? And there are many other applications. They are not only quantum computing, but I don't want to speak too long.
I recall watching some podcast where this person said, in 5 to 10 years, computers will be way smarter than we are as humans, and he was challenging us to say, what are we doing to make sure that we are ready for that, for the time when there are computers that are much smarter, or machines that are much smarter than we are, and I think there's something to think about, whether we build the hardware or if we can access it online, that's better. If we can use the software, develop new software, that's better. But I think the message to our young people that the sooner we get on board, the better, is really long overdue, because as you say, by the time they do their PhDs, it will be time up for them to get on board. Let me get to Divine, and then I'll come to you, Francesco. I do want us to talk about getting young researchers involved. But Divine, you work a lot with the idea of artificial intelligence and its implications for healthcare and the ethics of care in South Africa, and this is a key use case for these emerging technologies. Let's look a little bit into that. How will algorithm be coded into Africa's care infrastructure? I mean, when you look at this artificial intelligence and its implications for healthcare and ethics of care in Africa, how will algorithms be coded into care infrastructure?
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you very much, Patriciana. When Patriciana was speaking, it does remind me of part of the critique. I think it's Thandika Kadawire who writes about running while others walk. That it is important that there is this. So we are caught in a place. One, we have to be part of something. Another, we have to ask ourselves what it means to catch up. And another, we need to ask ourselves what it means, to have to embrace technology. I think they're fundamental questions that we really have to ask. One is to be part of a global science. The other is to ask what we want science to do for us, and I think that's partly when I think the professor is talking about investing in the long term. We need to be investing in those questions. We need to invest in inquiry. We need to invest in research. We need to invest in asking questions for the sake of asking questions. I think part of the problem that we face is that we have gotten to a point where the questions that we have to ask are almost predictable. They must go towards a positive or towards what is seen as a productive use. And I think things like quantum physics and quantum mechanics would hardly have happened if we had just invested in having to ask questions in what was seen as productive. So we're inviting lots of young people to come on board, but to really ask questions that are difficult questions, to also enjoy the art of asking questions, because that is the heart of how we produce knowledge for the continent. And that is how we make it African. And when you ask questions about coding technology, coding AI into the care infrastructure on the continent, it's a very tough question, Katie. We ask a simple question, for example, like what is data? If data is at the heart, for example, of having to build an artificial intelligence infrastructure for a continent, what does it mean to be thinking data in a place where people do not relate to the Cartesian subject, where people are interconnected, where we haven't really had infrastructure to collect data? So these are really quick questions that we have to ask. So as we embrace this technology, having people to invest in researching these very small things are quite core, because in the future we are going to be walking while others run if we don't ask this. We will embrace, but we'll catch up. We will embrace, but we will have to mimic. So how do we make sure we don't mimic? Asking fundamental questions about data, about machine, about technology. About what I like about quantum physics and quantum science is that it deals with a lot about uncertainty. It takes uncertainty seriously. So if we come from a continent that's asks lots of questions about uncertainty, is it possible to have a generation of young people who are investing in asking questions about uncertainty, and we don't call it suspicion? Like when we have a student asking, why does thunder happen? So instead of us laughing about thunder or asking why the wish is right, but instead of us laughing, we invest in asking or explaining. So we need lots of young people to do that, and I think that's what's going to change the care infrastructure for the future. That we have young people who are asking questions that are intelligible and that make our experiences intelligible. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we have a question from a teacher. Thanks very much, Divine. And I want to throw this question in, Francesco, as I before I get to ask the other question. So the question is from Moreki. I know Moreki was my student at Wits. He's a brilliant science teacher, and he says he's a learner teacher support material coordinator at work. He says, I requestioned laptops for educators. We, however, got a memo that laptops might arrive a bit later because COVID-19 created a high demand for chips, computer chips. My question is, he says, why do we run short of computer chips? Francesco, I don't know if you can ask us. Is it because it takes time to manufacture them, or the raw materials needed to manufacture them are scarce? Do you know, Francesca, the question?
Yes, thank you very much. I think this is mainly a consequence of COVID. Yeah, COVID was disrupted to many industries. Many supply chains were completely disrupted by the first stages of the pandemic, where we are all were locked down. Yeah, and so were the goods. Yeah. And of course, the other effect that was also mentioned in the question is that during the pandemic we were all living in Zoom and Teams, yeah. So there was a huge demand and not much supply, yeah, and that caused the problem, yeah. And so hopefully slowly it will come back to normal, yeah. But
but what?
Yeah.
What is the raw material that's used to manufacture chips? Where does it come from? Do we know?
Yeah. Some come also from everywhere. Yeah, chips are mainly silicon-based, and there are other more rare materials that you find maybe mainly at the moment in China, but recently they were also discovered in Turkey, so that also might be a new source to avoid the supply problems in future. Yeah. It's very difficult, I think, to pinpoint what the cause is, because in this global economy where everything is connected, yeah, even if a ship company doesn't operate properly, can create a shortage of chips, not because we don't have the raw materials or we don't have the factory to produce them, just because the whole supply is disrupted. Yeah, so it's very complex.
All right. And then Divine, can I go back to you before I go to Francesco? What kinds of hospitals have you thought about? The kinds of hospitals that we may need, given what the future looks like, given what the quantum revolution and advanced AI tells us? What will future hospitals? What may they look like?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. That's a very important and difficult question, because that's the question we're asking for. We are trying to understand how the hospital will look like in 50 years. And there are various versions of it. There is experiments with telehospitals. The interesting thing about artificial intelligence is the ways in which we are trying to have machines, also to do, what we do, and also to facilitate. But interestingly, what increasingly happens is that care, which is really key for healing itself, we increasingly lose it. So we're asking very important question is what becomes of care? What happens, with things like a touch? What happens with things that relates, to spirituality? How do you get to deal with coding these things or bringing machines into play? So we see the hospitals very diverse, but artificial intelligence as facilitating the work of hospitals and the future hospitals with tech, having hospitals also or treatment or medicine that is happening at home, or telemedicine. But our particular focus is around care. What becomes of care? What becomes of the human, the human and the humane aspects? Going to the hospital is not just about being treated with your a disease in terms of the biology, but being accompanied by someone, having the love. So what becomes of all of these technologies? So that's really what we are focusing on. We don't have an answer, but what we are increasingly finding is that without deep collaboration between the humanities and also natural sciences, we're going to build technology which is really important and very useful, but that also misses out on many other aspects that locate them within society and on everyday lives. And one of those, as I've said, is like touch. So we are missing out on touch. We've seen it during COVID that It wasn't just about the disease, that lots of people, just the fact of being isolated, even when you can treat them through medicine, through computers, that people, without having touch, without feeling people, without having to talk, without hugging people. Hugging is so important for healing someone. So what happens when it's just a machine treating you and you cannot get hugged? So those are the really core things that we are thinking about. And we think by working with scientists like quantum and all other people on AI, we can all find ways of having to see how to best locate these technologies in our everyday lives and not lose out on the human aspects. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Divine. Thank you very much. That ethic of care comes out very strongly there, and you're right. And I guess when we looked at that video of GESDA, when it says, you know, this science of the future might actually shape what it means to be human. Will it shape what it means to be human? Will it shift how we relate as human beings? I mean, it's interesting. What will the ethics of care look like? Francesco, I want to ask you this question that Odubemi Adesina asked on Facebook, and Odubemi is saying, if semiconductors are the core of our present computers, what is it for the quantum computers?
Okay, that's now we're getting technical. No, very interesting question. You know, the final answer, nobody knows, because at the moment people are following different approaches to build quantum computers. Yeah, one, let's say, at the moment, mainstream approach is to use very, very low temperatures, yeah, where we know that properties of matter change a little bit, and noise is not so important, yeah, to build quantum computing chips, yeah, that are based on SQUID's superconducting devices, yeah. Other people adopt other strategies, yeah, and try to build quantum computers using single ions or single atoms, yeah, and building chains of or lattices of single of ions on chips, also at low temperatures, to manipulate the famous quantum bits, the qubits. Yeah. Other people are exploring particles of light as the technology to build quantum computers, yeah, so photons, yeah. But even these photonic computers, yeah, operate on chips, yeah, so that at the end of the day, yeah, our knowledge in semiconductors and silicon-based approaches, yeah, will be very useful, yeah, to develop quantum computers, yeah. But you know, the race is still open. Yeah? There are different architectures, there are different underlying technologies, yeah? And it's not so 100% obvious who will win the race at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and Francesco, should young people be worried? Dondo Tebe is asking, are jobs at risk due to artificial intelligence, advanced artificial intelligence? Should they be worried about jobs for the future?
I would say no, because if they are able to program artificial intelligence, their jobs will be secure. Yeah, you know, every time new technology arises, there are jobs that are risk. Yeah, you know, when the first robots came out, many factory jobs disappeared. Yeah. But you need other jobs to build the robots. You need other jobs to run the robots. Someone needs to program the robots. Yeah, so that you know, there will be a shift in jobs. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure there won't be millions of unemployed people only because of a slightly better machine learning algorithm. Yeah, that I wouldn't be worried about. There will be other jobs. Yeah, like always in the history of industry. Yeah? New technologies emerge, some jobs disappear, but others are created. Yeah. And you know, and the advice to the young people is to bet on the jobs that will be necessary when they finish their studies. Yeah, don't bet so much on the job that today, because by the time you graduate, maybe nobody needs those jobs anymore. Yeah? Just try to look a little bit ahead and see what the trends are. Yeah.
That's a very important point, Francesco, you're saying, and it actually falls right into what we're talking about in these 4 sessions, this one being the first, that we want young people to think about how the science of the future can shape today. So if you are a young person out there worried about jobs, whether the artificial intelligence or quantum revolution is going to change jobs or take jobs away, that's not the worry. There'll be more jobs. What you should do is to think about how that science will shape today, and then think about how can it shape your context. Remember, that's the challenge for you. That's the challenge that I want to introduce to you just at the end. In 2 minutes to 5, I'm going to be telling you more about that challenge. Think about what that science of the future will shape today. Don't worry about the fact that the job that you're doing today will not be there. There will be more jobs, better jobs, but you've got to think about it today. And these sessions are actually to give you the leg up as you think about how the science of the future can shape your today. But of course, we also have to be aware, I'm sure, or think about the risks that we need to anticipate today, particularly in relation to ethics, algorithmic biases, and inclusion. And I'm going to ask Divine to perhaps think with us there. Are there any risks? What are the risks that we need to anticipate with these developments? The risks that we can anticipate today, particularly in relation to ethics, or maybe in relation to algorithmic biases, or perhaps in relation to inclusion. Divine?
Yes, thank you very much, Katie. I think that's a very important question. I still want to take us back to 2016 when a student at UCT asked that said science must fall, and which I often say we all laughed at instead of having to take that as a challenge. Because when you have a really important a project that does not make itself intelligible to its context, it becomes very problematic for lots of people. So, and that's the risk. And that's why I'm saying that I do agree with Patriciane that no one should be worried about jobs. There's so much work to do, especially on the continent, because we have to first start by making sure that we really define for ourselves what it is to do science, what it is to be part of science, and what kinds of science we want to do. But the risk is that we get wiped out. So decolonization is a very important project here. We reproduce this in our everyday lives. So we are building technologies that is mimicking voice. When I talk to the computer, people tell me I have so much work to do, I should dictate to my computer. I do dictate to my computer does not understand me. You know, I have been on the computer and seen people try to do translation. The computer does not understand the accent. So there is so much work coding our realities, whether we're getting into the metaverse, coding our lives, making sure that these histories that make us people in this world are part of this world. Otherwise, what we are going to do is just to reproduce the same processes. And that's the problem with the ethics that we have, that technology is also born out of a dark corner. It comes, a lot of the technology we also use today also come from the military and from many other places. So it comes with lots of implications also on power and power relations and other things. So how do we unpack or undo, you know, the consequences of some of these things? They do have problems for the future, but it doesn't mean we cannot mitigate. Thank you.
Thanks, Divine. Francesco, I want you to get in on this question of possible risks. Any possible risks here that we should be aware of, whether that we need to anticipate, whether ethical, algorithmic, or about inclusion?
Yeah, you know,
Francesco?
this is a question that is relevant to all technologies. Yeah, you know, science per se is neither good nor bad. Yeah, it just describes nature as it is. Yeah. It's what we do out of it. Yeah, you know, we can use nuclear energy to produce electricity, but we can also use nuclear physics to create atom bombs. Yeah, you know, one is good, one is bad. Yeah, you know, it all depends even a knife. Yeah, you can use it to prepare your dinner, and you can use it to kill someone. Yeah, the knife itself is neither good nor bad. Yeah, it's what we as humans do. Yeah. But the important thing is and maybe I can connect again to GESDA, the reason why we are probably ultimately here. Yeah, one of the initiatives that we've been working over the last year or two with GESDA was the proposal of an open quantum institute, yeah, an institute open to everyone, to offer everybody the possibility to take advantage of quantum computers, yeah, in a good sense. Yeah, and the same questions we have to address in planning this open quantum institute, yeah, because you want to make sure that people don't abuse it for aims that are not so noble. Yeah, if they use it to create new fertilizer, that's fine. Yeah, but if you want to use it to I don't know, to come up with some new terroristic activities, yeah, that's not so good. Yeah? And it's a question that is more for divine than for me. But it's everything we can turn this way or that way. Yeah, it's an ethical problem. It's not so much a scientific problem. Yeah. Science needs to come together and put system in place to make sure that the bad uses of science are not promoted. Yeah, to make sure that there is no bad use of science. Yeah, we entered last week, or I think no, this week. This past week. The International Year for Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development. Yeah, so those are the aims we have to work for. Yeah, every time you listen to the news or read the newspaper, there is some new climate catastrophe somewhere in the world. Yeah, we need to use science to prevent climate catastrophes. Yeah? And if the polluters don't change their mind, yeah, those are the bad guys. We will be in trouble. Yeah, so there is this tension, yeah, between doing good science and bad habits that we had over centuries. Yeah, that we need to change, because otherwise we won't have many centuries ahead of us. Yeah. Some countries have temperatures that are so high that they never had them so high before. and if you wake up in the morning and the temperature outside is close to 50 in Celsius, that's pretty hot. Yeah, and there's not much life that can go on at those temperatures. So we are really facing huge challenges. Yeah. Globally and locally, yeah, that we need to solve with. Maybe not just with factional politicking, yeah, but I don't want to become political now, yeah, but using the best science that we have to solve the problems, yeah, and the science is there, yeah, just a matter of making use of it, yeah, taking consideration of the environment and of the need of the people, yeah. Those are choices that societies take. Yeah, and probably scientists should be a little bit more vocal in promoting the good science, and advertising what it can do for the benefit of society. Yeah? And things like this event this afternoon are part of it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Francesca. I mean, what you and Divine have just said, I'm glad that we're ending on this note, because there's excellent science going on in the world, and it's going on, it's getting produced, as I said, at an unprecedented rate. It's good science, it's rigorous, but how we use it is really on the humans, the people. And that's why GESDA brings together academics, politicians, scientists, diplomats, executives, and investors all together to look at how we can use the science of the future to shape the present. It's very, very important. And that's why we have in this platform today to get young people to think with us on how we can use the science of the future to shape our today. And I saw that Anele Siotula, who's a student at UCT, asked a question about how do we make sure that we introduce how can we introduce the science, artificial intelligence when maths is lacking? Well, that's part of our challenge, and we have to make sure that we introduce mathematics and we become serious about its importance and science from a very early age, whether it's done at school or at science clubs or science fairs. Take your children, make them experience it, make them excited about it. Television programs that introduce children to science, get them into them, because we need all our young people to get interested in the science, but also to start thinking about how much this good science needs good human beings to shape the present. So now, in closing, let me invite all of you to submit your ideas about how you can use the future to shape your present situation based on any of the topics that we'll cover in the sessions. Today, we covered quantum revolution and advanced artificial intelligence. Tomorrow, we will introduce what we'll be covering on Sunday. You can join us next Sunday. Remember, there's 4 sessions. This was the first. We've got 3 more coming. And you submit any idea that you have. You just focus on your present and you look at how can you use the future to shape the present. And when we say the future, we mean the science of the future. And I will tell you the date on which to submit your ideas. For details on the length of the submission, the due date, and where to submit, make sure that you don't miss the next session. In the meantime, during the week, make sure to follow at GESDA Global, and you can follow my Twitter page and Facebook page as well to get more information. Let me clue you in. The prize is big. If you win this challenge, you'll get an all expenses paid trip to attend the GESDA Summit 2022, which is a global summit of thought leaders on these topics that we're talking about. And it will be held in Geneva, Switzerland, from the 12th to the 14th of October. And if you really make a good submission, who knows? I might just travel with you. You might just be sitting next to me, you know? So get those ideas going and join me next week, and I'll tell you more details on what you need to submit, when, and to whom, so that you can get into this challenge. Next week, see you then for the second session. Have a good week. Thank you very much to Divine and Francesco.